In 1191, at the First Battle of Tarain, Prithviraj Chauhan's forces routed the invading army of Muhammad Ghori. Chauhan chose to pardon the defeated commander, allowing him to retreat to Ghazni. Exactly 1 year later, those two armies met again on that same field. This time, Chauhan was captured, and his army's resistance was broken. This swift transition from total victory to capture and execution in a single year points toward a specific, catastrophic breakdown in military doctrine. Chauhan's military philosophy, based on static formations and a rigid sense of honor, had met its tactical limit. The Rajput military relied on three main components: lines of armored war elephants, massed frontal cavalry charges, and dense formations of foot soldiers. This physical force was guided by Dharmayuddha, a code of righteous warfare that placed strict moral boundaries on combat. The code prohibited night attacks and the use of deception, favoring open, daylight battle, where individual glory was often valued over collective coordination. Adhering to these rules created what historians call the Yudhishthira syndrome. By refusing to adapt to unconventional threats, Chauhan's army became highly predictable. Because Muhammad Ghori knew exactly what Chauhan would not do, he was able to design a strategy specifically to exploit that rigidity. Chauhan was vulnerable before the campaign even began. He entered the second battle at Tarain shortly after a brutal internal conflict with the Chandela dynasty at Mahoba. While he won at Mahoba, the battle exhausted his veteran soldiers and alienated allies like the Gahadavalas. This isolation meant that when the Ghurids arrived, Chauhan had no reserves to call upon. Muhammad Ghori, however, had spent the year building a specialized force of 120,000 men. This army was trained specifically to bypass the Rajput strengths. When an army loses the numbers needed to absorb its mistakes, a rigid military doctrine becomes a liability. Ghori began with deception, sending a fake peace treaty to lull the Rajput camp into a sense of security. Chauhan accepted the offer at face value. Ghori then violated the Rajput rules of war, launching a full-scale surprise attack before sunrise while Chauhan's army was still unprepared. The raid prevented the Rajputs from forming their disciplined defensive phalanxes or properly organizing their elephants. By breaking the established rules of combat before the battle began, Ghori stripped Chauhan of his primary tactical advantages. As the main battle developed, Ghori avoided the Rajput infantry. Instead, he divided his army into 5 mobile units. 4 units of mounted archers surrounded the Rajput elephants, firing volleys and retreating immediately whenever the Rajputs attempted to charge. This cycle of harassment and retreat continued for hours, exhausting the heavily armored Rajput forces, who were unable to pin down their attackers. Ghori then executed his final, devastating move, ordering his central units to perform a feigned, panicked retreat away from the front lines. Conditioned by their victory the previous year, the Rajputs believed the Ghorid morale was breaking again. They broke their own defensive lines to pursue the retreating enemy, creating gaps and disorder across their entire formation. At that moment, Ghori unleashed his fresh reserve of 12,000 heavy cavalry straight into the disorganized Rajput center. Ghori had weaponized the Rajputs' own tactical instincts to facilitate their collapse. The tactical trap led to a rout. Prithviraj Chauhan was captured a short distance from the field and later executed. This was more than a clash between two kings. It was the collision of two different systems of war. The victory at Tarain II led to the creation of the Delhi Sultanate, a shift changing the Indian subcontinent's political structure for centuries. Tarain II demonstrated that in the face of tactical evolution, rigid honor and individual bravery are often insufficient against strategic flexibility and deception.